on the amazing work that our BHF has been doing alongside and powered by our brilliant supporters. So clearly, as I'm sure it has been for you in your personal and professional lives, there's no doubt that this pandemic has been the single biggest challenge the BHF has ever faced. And over the last year or so, we've seen a dramatic impact on all of the things that we do. We've seen the lockdown restrictions impact our income and anticipate a net drop of income this year around 50%. I'm really saddened to know that that means that we have less money to invest in life-saving research and new life-saving research this year. So our budget will actually drop for new research from around £100 million to £50 million. But what gives us amazing hope and comfort is the amazing way in which our supporters are rallying around the British Heart Foundation and playing their part to help us raise vital funds to make sure we can keep that amazing research we know we need to make the discoveries that help people going. So huge thank you to everybody on this call today who I know has have done so much to help us with that. Thank you. And I'd like to also share with you some of the brilliant things our team have done to play our part as a BHF during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the first, and you'll hear a lot about this today, is that we've set up a coronavirus hub that is backed by our brilliant Heart Helpline. And this has already helped between those support and services, been used by over 2 million people. And we know how much of a lifeline that information and support is for people, and look forward to sharing a bit more detail with you in the presentations today. We're also really proud to have played our part in terms of the research undergoing at the moment to understand the connection between COVID-19 and heart and circulatory disease. And the BHF partnered with the National Institute for Health Research to set up 6 flagship projects that are examining different aspects of how we might understand and tackle COVID-19 and the link to heart and circulatory disease. So really an amazing effort from the team, and we've also taken big steps to try and protect as much as we can our life-saving work and keep our research activity going, including taking steps to extend our research commitments for all of those amazing scientists across the country doing work right now to further our understanding of heart and circulatory disease and the steps to develop new treatments and care and support for people. Now, there are a couple of things perhaps before I open up and invite our nurses to share more of what they have to share with you today. I'd like to call out is one, thank you to everybody who has decluttered after Christmas or already shared your unwanted Christmas gifts with us. We have a wonderful network of BHF shops across the UK's 4 nations, and sadly today all of them are closed, of course, because of restrictions, and that's right. What we have is a postal service, so if you do have any unwanted goods or you've had a New Year declutter and you have things to send to us, whether it be jewellery or clothing or books or DVDs, it's a wonderful free post service available. So I know the team will put that in the chat so you can have a look at the link, and please do keep us supported and keep sharing anything you can with us to help us raise vital funds. And the other thing I've loved seeing examples of across our network is a beautiful piece of fundraising activity called the Heart of Steel. And this is a beautiful, massive heart made of steel where, in tribute to someone or in honour of a special date, you can have a name and a date engraved on this brilliant artwork to honour somebody or a moment in time. And we've done this in my family to honour granddads and uncles that we've lost to heart disease. And it's just a wonderful way to make a special moment at a time when, of course, that support is never more needed. So again, I know the team will be putting that in the sidebar. And if that's of interest to you, please do take a look. So without further ado, I know that you will have questions for Maryam and Julie, and look forward to hearing those from you. And know that as we enter 2021, we're all particularly concerned about our heart health, and know how much the COVID-19 pandemic has caused people with heart and circulatory disease to think about heart health and of course to seek advice and support on everything from the vaccine to how to look after yourself. And the team have done a great job at providing that support. But before I open up, I'm going to ask you a question via our poll. So you'll see a question pop up in a moment. It's a very simple one. We're asking you, have you ever used BHF's Heart Helpline services or referred to our website support? So have you ever called the helpline or visited our website? I'm going to give you a few seconds to respond. So simple yes or no will do us brilliantly. And then the team will publish the results so we can have a look. And if you haven't already, I'm going to take the time to say, go and have a look. That's a fantastic resource, lots of incredibly useful information that the team keep updated daily. So if you're ready, let's have a look. Okay, look at this. So just sharing it of us on the call today, around 60% of people have accessed the website or helpline. And for those, I hope you found it incredibly helpful and useful, and around 40% not. So please do take a moment to check out the website after our call today. But without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Maryam, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our Coronavirus Hub and our helpline. Over to you, Maryam.
Well, thank you very much, Charmaine, and thank you to everybody for joining us on the Heart Helpline special live event. I'm Maryam. I'm one of the cardiac nurses on the Heart Helpline, and I'm one of the small but fantastic team of cardiac nurses that respond to inquiries, whether it's by telephone or by email, sometimes chat as well. It's confidential, it's free, and it's for anybody that's got any concerns about their own or their loved one's heart health. We provide information, support and guidance for anybody. It doesn't matter what their situation is or what their concerns are. If it's heart related, we're here for you. And I'm just going to show a couple of slides with you just so that you can get a flavour for what we actually do, and some figures about our service. So just give me a moment, and slide, just come up here. Okay, so the Heart Helpline is a really important source of support for many, many people. I've been working on the Heart Helpline now for nearly 10 years. And as I said, I'm one of a small team of cardiac nurses. There's usually about 4 to 5 nurses on the Heart Helpline as cardiac nurses. And then we have a team of senior cardiac nurses that support us on rotation. I feel really privileged to be able to hear and support people that have got questions and concerns about their heart health or their heart, the hearts of their loved ones. For many people, it's a really difficult time, and it's very confusing for many people. It can be quite terrifying for some to find out that there's something wrong with their heart. And so it's a real privilege to be able to take those questions and support people through that. That's what we're here for. We're here to help, and we're here for you. So thanks to all your generous donations, we're able to provide this service for you. The British Heart Foundation is a really trusted source of support for people living with heart and circulatory conditions. And as I said, we provide confidential guidance and support for patients and their loved ones, whatever their condition is. We can take live calls, we can take email inquiries and the chat function, which is not always available. Sometimes it's paused when we're extremely busy. But that's also available for people who prefer to communicate in that way. We also have a really fantastic website, which Julie's going to talk about a little bit more. It also contains the Heart Matters magazine section, which is a fantastic, accessible resource full of friendly articles and helpful articles on so many different topics. We have a coronavirus hub as well, which Julie will talk about in a moment. And we provide lots of opportunities for people to support each other through our online events like this, to online communities. We have practical guides. We've got a cardiac rehab hub, which has proved invaluable during the pandemic. The type of questions that we get asked are really quite varied, but I'd say that probably a top handful of questions. And obviously it does depend on what's happening at the time. So more recently, topical questions are related to COVID-19 and the vaccine. But in general, people do call us about medicines and their side effects. Also understanding their condition, getting a diagnosis, knowing what to expect when they go for a test, when they go for a consultation, when they go for surgery, and just dealing with the emotional aspect of getting a diagnosis, either of themselves or a loved one, and knowing where to get access the right support and resources. And we've got a lot of that on our website. We also have printed booklets. As I said, we have the helpline that you can call in. We encourage people to call their relatives if they're worried about them. They can speak to us as well. During the recent pandemic and the current pandemic, people have been finding out information about their heart health through the post a lot of the time. They get results through the post. They may be given a diagnosis through a telephone consultation, and people struggle to get support for that. So we found lots of people are calling us about these issues. It's been difficult for people who've had a heart attack in the pandemic as well. They found that they have been diagnosed, treated, sent home with all the right meds, but have found the follow-up and the support really difficult because the usual sources of support just aren't there. Thanks to lockdown measures, they can't go out, meet friends, they can't go to rehab. So we're here to help them navigate that. We also get regular inquiries about lifestyle, diet. There's lots of stories in the news that come up and create a lot of interest and sometimes confusion. So we're there to sort of help clarify any questions that people may have about their lifestyle or diet. Sometimes newly published research findings come up. Often it's BHF studies themselves that have led to the research findings that come out in the news. And we're here to help people understand what that might mean for them as well. We have some callers sometimes question how to actually contact their GPs, how to ask questions, what questions to ask about a particular test or treatment or diagnosis, and also how to get the access to the healthcare that they require. It's increasingly difficult in a ever-changing healthcare system, which is largely locked down at the moment, to know what their options are, and we can help people understand what options they may have. That certainly has been the case in the last few months. It's also, as I said, more common to receive results through the post, so people can call us. I had a phone call today just from a patient who got some results through the post for their child and really didn't know what to make of it, and couldn't get through to their GPs. So we can provide some reassurance and some support around those questions. So just to give you a flavour of what calls we get through, what numbers of calls. The service itself is quite unique. As I said, it's a small core team of nurses supported by senior nurses, but on average we get about 60 to 90 calls a day. That's about 10 to 12 calls per nurse. At the peak of the pandemic we had about 400 calls a day. And we also have scheduled email and chat slots as well. So we do take calls, and if we're not able to take a call, we can call back. So we take messages and we can call people back. So probably during this pandemic, about nearly half of the calls have been COVID related, and that changes from day to day. And these are just some common questions that we get asked about COVID-19. And no doubt you'll have some questions yourselves to ask. But the most common ones are really about risk categories due to their conditions. And we're happy to explain as much as we can what the likelihood is of people being in a particular risk category. We've got a fantastic hub, which Julie will talk about in a moment, which helps to clarify some of the questions. Sometimes people are asking about going to work. Now, obviously, it's the vaccine and the safety issues, whether somebody should be shielding or not, whether loved ones should be shielding. Lots and lots of questions. Go on our website and have a look. There's lots of Q&As and further references if you really want to dig down and find out more information. We've got all the links and all the information up there. I believe there's a poll question coming up in a moment as well about our helpline. So if you wouldn't mind having a look at that question, I can read it out. It's Since COVID-19 hit, approximately how many inquiries do you think we've received on the Heart Helpline between April and December? So it's either the 20,500 calls, 21,000 or 23,500. So this is in the period between April and December. How many inquiries do you think we've taken on the Heart Helpline? Just a clue, we've been really busy. So hopefully you'll be able to guess correctly there. Quite a tough one then, because they're quite close. Oh, wow, you're all really good. So it's 70% if you got that right. So it's 23,500. That's fantastic. Well done. So I'm going to pass the baton on to my colleague Julie, who's going to explain a lot more about what we do as another part of our services on the website. So I'll just stop sharing and pass you over to Julie now.
Thank you, Julie. I think it's passing over to you. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Charmaine. I'm hoping everybody can see and hear me loud and clear. That's great. Thank you very much. So my name's Julie Ward and I'm a senior cardiac nurse within the clinical team at the British Heart Foundation. I've been with the British Heart Foundation for 7 years now, 7 incredible years. And I'm part of a team of senior cardiac nurses and senior dietitians. So we have 8 senior cardiac nurses, all with very, very different backgrounds. And we've got 2 senior dietitians. So we've got a lot of clinical expertise, a lot of background that we can bring to our role. And our role is very varied. So we do a variety of things within our roles. One of the most important things we do is we review medically and clinically all of the publications that we have. You may be aware that we have booklets on heart and circulatory conditions, risk factors like blood pressure, diabetes, obviously all of the heart conditions and circulatory conditions like heart disease and stroke. We also clinically review the Heart Matters online content and print, the magazine that some of you may be familiar with, and all of the other online content as well. So everything that is about heart and circulatory disease on our website we have reviewed to make sure it is medically accurate. And within that, we review all the latest guidelines, so national guidelines, European guidelines, and sometimes global guidelines to make sure that everything that we publish or say is absolutely medically accurate and research-based. We also input our clinical expertise into some of our campaigns that we run, some educational events, and anywhere where they need consultancy from a cardiac perspective. Another part of our role, which is quite interesting, is we work with our media team. So we respond to press requests, media requests. There may be a new piece of news research that has come out. It might be British Heart Foundation funded or otherwise, and we will talk about that research, dissect it, make it easy to understand. And we do this online, in print, on TV, and by radio. And then the most important, or one of the most important roles of a senior cardiac nurse is rotating through to the helpline, as Maryam mentioned. And this is really important because it really helps to keep us in touch with patients and people on the front line. And we rotate once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week, talking to patients from 9 to 5. And not just patients, but the public, people affected by heart and circulatory conditions, and also healthcare professionals. They quite often phone us for some information and support too. And we all found this incredibly useful and a very important part of our job. And another area which you may or may not be aware of is we do have a genetic information service. So several of our senior cardiac nurses have undergone further training in genetics, and we provide a genetic service via a helpline, 5 days a week, 9 to 5. I think there's information on the screen about that there. And that's for people that either want to inquire about inherited heart conditions or have been affected by an inherited heart condition, or really do need some assistance to go through the pathway of being referred to a specialist centre. Now, I mentioned the online content, and I'm just going to start sharing my screen because I want you to see one of the hubs that we have that has been particularly useful since the pandemic began. It's called the Coronavirus Hub. We do have several hubs on our website. We have a blood pressure hub, we have a cholesterol hub, we have a heart failure hub, just giving you some examples. But we also have this coronavirus hub, which was developed back in March last year as part of our response to the pandemic. So we pulled together information and support and helpful resources into this hub on our website to give information, the right information at the right time for people affected by coronavirus or who have any inquiries about coronavirus. It's been incredibly successful in respect that it's had over 2.6 million views. Anecdotally, people have fed back that it's been incredibly useful and they've found it a huge, almost a lifeline of support during the pandemic. And I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So this is one of our landing pages. So when you go onto the British Heart Foundation website and go into the hub, this is what you see. So you've got a whole different sections that you can choose from. You can find out what coronavirus is, what it actually does to the body. You can find out if you're at risk. So does your heart or circulatory condition put you at increased risk from coronavirus? And I'm sure we'll be having some questions about that today. You can find out about guidelines, what they mean. What does lockdown mean? What does shielding mean? What does self-isolating mean? All of these new terms that we've had to get to grips with. And also, because we're a UK-based charity, we have information for the whole 4 nations, England, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. We also have sections on how to live well during the pandemic, which is just so important right now. When we're all under such stress, what little things can we do to make us feel well and be well? So we've got lots of tips on diet, exercise, mental health, coping with stress, coping with anxiety, and lots of links to different resources and support that you can access, either locally or nationally, For example, we've got a link to NHS volunteers who are there to help people that need help with shopping and getting prescriptions, or even just a chat. And most importantly, at the moment, we've got a very, very extensive, comprehensive page on vaccines. And of course, this is at the absolute fore of everybody's concern at the moment. So we've really broken it down. You probably can see that there on the screen. What a vaccine is, who's going to get it and in what order, what vaccines are available, and also information about the companies that have produced the vaccines, how they did their trials. So that's the end of my section for now. I do hope you found that useful. And I do hope you'll be able to come and visit the Coronavirus Hub at your convenience. And that is the point. It's there 24 hours a day for you, 7 days a week. And it's updated on a very regular basis, sometimes daily, in accordance with the changing guidelines nationally. So I have a feeling I've got a poll question coming up. I'd just like to ask you all out there, have any of you visited the British Heart Foundation's Coronavirus Hub? This is going to be very interesting. Only 2 simple answers, yes or no. And I hope it's going to be more yes than no, but if it's not, that's fine, because you know about it now. So we'll just wait for the answers to come in. Well, so that's interesting. So 24% of people have, and 76% of people on the call haven't. So I'm hoping that my session will have been very useful for you, for the majority of you that haven't visited the hub. Do try and access it and have a look and delve around. And if you have any questions about any sections or anything at all, you know that you can call the helpline and speak to a cardiac nurse.
Lovely. Our huge thanks to Maryam and Julie, and as British Heart Foundation Chief Exec, I could not be prouder of the work that they and their colleagues are doing behind the scenes to make sure we've got such brilliant support and information available for everybody who needs it, as people described. So for all those 75% of you who've not yet had a moment to have a look at it, please do check out the Coronavirus Hub. My family have used it and found it incredibly useful to answer some of their questions. So we know you've got lots of questions for us. So without further ado, I'm going to actually ask our moderator behind the scenes, Christie, to give your questions to both Maryam and Julie. So over to you, Christie. Thank you.
Thanks, Charmaine. And yes, you're absolutely right. We've had lots of questions in from the public. So thank you for engaging so much with today's session. So our first question is for Maryam, and it is, I have been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, of which I'm now taking nebivolol 2.5 milligrams once a day. I also take warfarin as I have a metal mitral valve. The new tablet is controlling things better, but what I need to know is, will there ever be a cure for atrial fibrillation? And just an added note to this, I have had one atrial fibrillation ablation, and I'm prepared to possibly have another. Is there anything that I can do to stop AF happening, or does it get worse over time? Thank you, Maryam.
Well, thank you very much for that, Christie. There's probably about 3 questions rolled into one there, but I'll try the first question, which is if there's ever going to be a cure for AF. Well, there currently isn't a cure, as most people are aware. There isn't a cure for atrial fibrillation, or AF, as it's called. It's just a quick explanation of what AF is, that people understand. It's the most commonly diagnosed heart rhythm problem in the world. It basically involves rogue electrical signals at the top part of the heart, in the top 2 chambers called atria, which make the heart twitch rather than beat properly and synchronously. So it can cause problems. You can get it quite mildly, but you can get it severely as well. It can be, in some cases, linked to an increased risk of stroke due to blood collecting and pooling in the heart. So it's a really important condition because it does cause, it is actually quite a large cause of strokes worldwide. And so it's really important that we look into this, and the British Heart Foundation are certainly funding a lot of research to the tune of about £16 million last time I looked, to understand what causes it and also treatment. So perhaps one day that we will be able to prevent it. Whether it's a cure or not is another thing, but we do have a BHF professor called Professor Barbara Cassidy, who's in Oxford, and with her team she's looking at how to reduce the incidence of AF, which is quite a common problem following heart surgery. About 50% of patients having heart surgery have this problem, and Professor Cassidy's team are looking at whether using statins can help reduce the risk of this happening. So that's quite promising, because there might be some anti-inflammatory effects of statins, and she's also looking at scarring in the heart as well. So and the relationship of that with the development of AF. So all of these are promising studies, and we're definitely looking into that. So the second question is there, so this person has had a previous ablation in February 2019, and they're prepared to have another one if required. And is there anything that they can do to stop the AF happening? Well, the good news in a way is that you can influence sort of your risk of developing it and it coming back to some degree, but not always. So one of the treatments for AF is medicines. So beta blockers are commonly prescribed, but there are other medicines as well. One thing you can do is make sure you take your meds and make sure that you take them correctly. And if you have any problems with them, let your GP or specialist know about them, because obviously that can keep the AF at bay. If you've had a treatment like an ablation, then they're generally very, very successful treatments, ablations, but there's some evidence to say that the second one is even more successful. So even if you do need another one, it's more likely to be successful second time round. You can do some other things as well yourself to help keep the AF at bay, and we understand more and more that weight management is really important in keeping AF at bay. So keep to a healthy diet, look at our website and take all the tips on board there. Alcohol intake as well, that could be linked to the development of AF and resurgence of it, so try and moderate that as much as possible. And I think it's about keeping active, making sure that you go and see your doctor regularly, maybe learn how to take your pulse. We've got a fantastic page on our website about how to take your pulse. So maybe learn how to take your pulse and identify whether or not your heart is in a good rate, or if there's an abnormal rhythm. We've got a really good video there to help you. So a bit of self-monitoring is good. The final question, I think, was, does it get worse over time? It can do. And so if you do all your parts and go and see your doctors regularly, take your medicines, hopefully it won't, but it can do. It's been known to get worse as people get older, but there are many more treatments and cures. So whatever happens, there are treatments.
Thank you, Maryam. Fantastic answers there. Our second question is for Julie, and this is there a possibility of tracing family heart problems of deceased members?
Thank you, Christie. Yes, it is the answer to that. And it's really important to start with, to talk to your family members if possible. Give them a call, gather some information about what we call the family history. So have there been any heart attacks in the family, strokes, early deaths, unexplained deaths? So try and get as much information as possible just from your family members around what's been going on in the family over decades. If you then do have a concern that there is a family history of heart problems, the first thing you need to do is to speak to your GP. And I know that's not terribly easy at the moment, but it's really important. And make sure you've got as much information for the GP. The GP might even ask questions like, have any of your family members had death certificates with a cause of death on it? For example, ischemic heart disease, coronary heart disease, heart attack. That would be very useful for a GP. And also, some people that have passed away with a heart or circulatory condition have a post-mortem. And if this is the case, then you can actually call the coroner. You may already have access to it, but if you haven't, you can call the coroner and ask for a copy of the post-mortem results. For example, it might say something like an acute cardiomyopathy. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Sometimes, not always, sometimes you can get information from the person who's passed away from their GP. Obviously, there are issues around confidentiality. But for example, if you were very worried about a family history, or indeed thought that you may have a heart or circulatory condition yourself, sometimes the GP of the person who has passed away would be happy to share the relevant information. And then, of course, as I mentioned in my previous talk, we do have a genetic information service. So if the family history reveals that you may have an inherited or a genetic disorder going through the family, something like a cardiomyopathy. I mean, not all cardiomyopathies are inherited, but most are. Or something like familial hypercholesteremia, very, very high cholesterols causing early heart attacks and strokes. We call it FH. If you find out that, that those sort of conditions have been going through the family, or just even one family member has passed away with one of those conditions, give our genetic information service a call. You will speak to a genetically trained nurse, and she or he can talk you through the actual process of mapping out the family tree more extensively. We call it a pedigree. And we map out who's been affected by what condition, when, at what age. And then as we map out this pedigree, this family tree, we can possibly identify if there is some sort of inheritance pattern going through the family, and then we can advise you what to do from there.
Thanks, Julie. Fantastic. We have another question for you, Julie, which is, I would like to find out more about heart palpitations and why they occur. Can you explain, please?
Yes, of course. Yes. Well, palpitations are very common. Just to reassure people, at some point during our lives, we probably are going to have some palpitations. And what they actually are, or how they present, is like a fluttering sensation, sometimes a pounding sensation or a thud, or some movement in the chest region. And they can actually be very unpleasant. Just to reassure you all, they're largely benign, which means they're largely not harmful. But if they do persist and they bother you and they're frequent, or you really do need to have a chat with your GP about them, especially if you have a family history of heart problems. Other people talk about palpitations and say there's no rhyme or reason to them. They come and go. They might have had it last Tuesday and then not for another month, or they may have had it Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Some patients say they get it when they're lying down. They feel this sensation in their ears. sometimes even in the neck and throat, where they can really feel the heart pulsating and pounding. I suppose the most important thing is to keep a record, keep a diary of your palpitations, how frequently they occur, when they occur. Do they occur when you're doing exercise, or is it when you're at rest, or is it both? Very valuable information for the GP. I mentioned that palpitations are largely benign, but there are several conditions, heart conditions, that can cause palpitations. And that's why it's important that if they do persevere and really bother you, you do need to get them checked out with your GP. So some abnormal heart rhythms, like Maryam was talking about AF, some people can be in atrial fibrillation, AF, and they won't even know it, they won't even feel it. Other people can be in AF and they can feel this pounding and get palpitations. So some abnormal heart rhythms cause palpitations. Some of the cardiomyopathies that I was just alluding to previously, like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, they can cause palpitations, as can patients with congenital heart conditions and heart valve disease. So if they do persist, then get them checked out. But also there's other things in our daily lives and in our lifestyle that can cause palpitations. So it's always worth bearing those in mind. Caffeine can cause palpitations. I mean, it's pretty safe to drink 4 to 5 cups of coffee or tea a day. But some people are quite sensitive to caffeine and it will cause palpitations. So try a bit of decaf, knock back the caffeine for a while and see if that makes a difference. Alcohol, as Maryam was talking about, can cause palpitations too. So moderate your alcohol intake. Smoking, vaping, drug use can all contribute to palpitations. Just to bear those things in mind. But also, especially during this very, very stressful period that we're all going through at the moment, anxiety itself can cause palpitations, and we know that. And this heightened sense of panic and anxiety. So a lot of the calls to the helpline during the pandemic have been about palpitations.
Thanks, Julie. That's fantastic. We have another question from Maryam. As someone with heart disease due to high cholesterol, I'm 47 years old and now on statins. Would it be beneficial to have the heart monitoring functionality of the new Apple Watches that are out there?
Okay, thank you for that, Christie. That's a really interesting question, and one that we get more commonly now. The Apple Watch apparently has got some ECG functionality to it, the new series. So we do get questions about whether or not it's a reliable item to use. I'd say if the person who's asking the question has got an underlying heart rhythm, they have been found to have some accuracy, but not very much. So probably about 30 to 40% accurate in picking up a heart rhythm problem. So I don't know how accurate or reliable that would be. It's not actually a medical grade device. But if you just wanted to use it to check your heart rate and motivate you to do activity and make sure that you're doing your activity within something called the target heart rate zone, which you can check up on our website. We've got a good calculator on there how to do that. They can be really helpful, but it's not a medical grade device. And the new watches, like the Apple range, they've got this enhanced feature. It may be slightly more accurate in older people, less so I understand in younger people, and it can cause a lot of anxiety, possibly over-diagnosis in some instances because of the inaccuracy. So very good for heart rates and monitoring your heart rate and seeing that you're being active, but not necessarily great at being accurate, looking for a heart rhythm problem. There are medical grade devices that you can use to accurately identify a heart rhythm problem for sort of ordinary people, but you would really want to make sure that you check with a cardiologist that they're happy to allow you to do that and interpret the readings when you get them. So I would check, if you've got a heart rhythm problem, check with your cardiologist that they're happy for you to get a medical grade device if that's what you want, or check with your GP if they're happy to look at the results. So they can be helpful, but the accuracy of is not brilliant.
Thanks, Maryam. Brilliant. Our next question is for Julie, and it's related to COVID. So could you please tell me whether or not I should be on the high risk vulnerable category regarding COVID? I have had a triple bypass 8 years ago, which has been unsuccessful, leaving me with 2 out of 3 blocked vessels. Julie, would you mind answering this one, please?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Christie. Very, very good question. And this is where the coronavirus hub would be very useful for this caller, because we do have information about who is at risk and why. So having a heart condition and having coronary heart disease does place you in a higher risk category for coronavirus. So it's not a higher risk of getting the virus. We're all at the same risk of getting the virus. It's at a higher risk of having more severe symptoms if you did catch it. So when we talk about the risk categories, there's a high risk, there's particularly high risk, and there's extremely high risk or extremely vulnerable. You're at high risk if you have coronary heart disease and you're less than 60. But if you're over 60 and have coronary heart disease, then you're at particularly high risk. And what this means is that you follow the national and local guidelines for lockdown. It doesn't mean you have to self-isolate. It doesn't mean you have to shield. That category is for the extremely vulnerable. People who are waiting for a heart transplant, or have had a heart transplant, or have got maybe pregnant ladies with very complex cardiac conditions, for example. So when you're in the high risk or the particularly high risk group, it's all about socially distancing, strict hand hygiene, using your antibacterial wipes at home on a frequent basis to wipe down all your surfaces. And I think the most important advice is one of the most important pieces of advice in this category is to work from home if possible. If you can't work from home, then there are things that we can do, or your employers can do, to get around reducing your risk. And if you need further information on that, then just call the helpline and our nurses will be able to talk you through that. So it's all about keeping your condition under control. So the better controlled your condition is, you're lowering your risk from coronavirus all the time. So for example, if you were having frequent angina attacks from your coronary heart disease, speak to your GP. He or she may be able to augment your medications, increase them, change them to get those angina episodes under control. So the good news is, the better controlled your condition is, you're reducing your risk from the virus. And lifestyle factors come into play here too. So keeping well, keeping active within the guidelines that you're having to live under. Eating a healthy diet, not smoking, not drinking too much. So all of the sort of lifestyle factors are really important to keep yourself as well as possible, and to boost your immune system.
Fantastic. Maryam, I have a question for you, which is there a link between heart health and diabetes?
Hi, yeah. So the question was, is there a link between heart health and diabetes? Well, we know that the risk factors for diabetes are very similar to the risk factors for cardiovascular and heart and circulatory conditions. Diabetes is one of them. If your weight and if your weight is not maintained to a sort of healthy kind of BMI, there have been links to the development of diabetes because of that. But there are inherited tendencies as well. So it's more that the risk factors are very similar more than anything else. It's not that heart disease would necessarily cause diabetes. It's more the same risk factors would lead potentially to diabetes. But if you have diabetes, then you are potentially more at risk of developing heart disease, because what happens with diabetes is you develop an inflammatory problems, and they can actually lead to the development of coronary artery disease, because of the inflammation and the various other problems that go along with diabetes increase that risk. So from diabetes to cardiovascular disease, there are increased risks. I would say that it's very similar heart risk factors for both, and indeed diabetes is a circulatory condition. So blood pressure, so you've got to keep everything under control really, so that you keep your risk of cardiovascular disease as low as possible if you've got diabetes, managing your sugars, your weight, and the same goes for heart disease as well. So cutting out smoking, keeping your alcohol intake moderate as well, managing your weight, visiting your GP, having regular checkups as much as possible, monitoring as much as you can on your own will keep the risk of developing diabetes and cardiovascular disease lower.
Thank you, Maryam. I've got one final question, if we can take it just a couple of minutes, for Julie actually, and this is a question that we've had, and you probably heard Christie's sound went a bit strange. She became a bit of a Dalek, so I'll take over this last question for her, which is, can bereavement cause a physical effect on the heart? So if you could just take a couple of minutes to share your thoughts with us, Julie, that would be great.
Thank you, Charmaine. That's a very interesting question. Historically, we didn't think that any of our emotions could have an effect on the heart. But through research, particularly over the last several years, 5 years or so, we've learned a lot more about how it affects the heart. And there is one particular condition where something like a bereavement or an acute emotional event can have an effect on the heart, and it's called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Now, thankfully, it's very rare, but when it happens, it's an insult, it's an event to the heart caused by an acute emotional response. It could be a bereavement, it could be moving house, it could be a divorce, but equally, we found out recently through research that it could actually be an extremely happy event as well, something like an upcoming marriage, an exciting wedding. So it's a very, very interesting condition. Luckily, most people that do have or experience Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, where the heart muscle becomes very, very weak, is not pumping blood effectively around the body, there are very, very good treatments for it. And most patients recover completely normally and go on to live a normal life.
Thank you, Julie. That's a great answer. And actually, to share with you that the very next of our live and ticking events, which is on the 24th of February between 4 and 5, so roughly the same time in a month or so, is actually going to be looking at that condition. And we've got an amazing Professor Dana Dawson, who's going to be joining us and sharing more about their research. And one of our patients who has a lived experience of this, Karen Curra. So would strongly welcome you to join us at that next session to find out more about that cardiomyopathy and more about BHF's research and people's experiences, which would be great. So we only have a couple of moments left, and I just want to assure you, I can see behind the scenes that we've had lots and lots of questions for you, and that we will get back to each of you. And can I also remind you that in the sidebar and that you'll have seen, there's also a reminder of the number for our brilliant Heart Helpline, and also an email address you can an email with your questions or queries as well. So please do encourage loved ones to be aware of that. Do check out the Coronavirus Hub as an amazing resource at a time when we know a lot of people are worried about the vaccine, about what this means for people with heart and circulatory diseases, and about your condition. So please do look to BHF resources, which we know are a lifeline for so many people. There were just two other comments I was just going to mention in the chat. We'd heard a question came through, I think, from Carl, that had described people's anxiety about putting pressure on the NHS at this moment and not seeking help when they have the symptoms of a heart attack. And indeed, we've heard similar for stroke. And you've probably seen the NHS campaigning at the moment to say, if you do have symptoms of a heart attack or stroke, it's really important you seek help, because every minute counts. And if you would take a moment, perhaps I'm going to do this after this call myself, take a moment to have a look at our website and look at the symptoms of a heart attack and stroke to just remind yourself of what they are. And if you do have experienced those, please do call 999. The NHS is there for you. So I know the NHS are messaging that at the moment. We would just emphasise it. It really matters. So thank you, Carl, for that. And also to Zena, thank you for your kind message, just really thanking the Helpline team for their incredible efforts and their kindnesses, and all the brilliant resources that our healthcare innovation team put together, whether that be exercise videos or other. And Zena says she's up in the frozen north, and I'm not sure how north you are, Zena, but I hope you're warm and glad that you're enjoying our exercise videos so much as well. So thank you for your kind message. We'll certainly pass that on to the team. So just to draw us to a close, as we know you've got your evenings to get on with, I know you'll join me in thanking Maryam and Julie for being such brilliant speakers today, and also so kindly and thoughtfully responding to questions with their expertise. So huge thanks to you both. And we would ask you, as people who've joined us again for this session, just to take a couple of minutes and follow up to complete the survey that you'll be sent, to tell us what you've enjoyed about this, what you'd like to see more of. And also we'd love to hear about other things that you'd like us to cover. So we love your feedback. It helps us make these sessions the best they possibly can be for you, our BHF supporters. And as I mentioned at the start, really love hearing from you in general. So please do watch out for the next event in February. Again, that's 24th of February. Sign up for that at bhf.org.uk/public events if you haven't already. Please do tell your friends, family, loved ones if you think they'll be interested in that as well, and join us. And finally, I just want to say a massive thank you again, not only for joining us today, but for all of the support so many of you give to the British Heart Foundation. We need that more now than ever, and we couldn't simply provide the support you've heard about today and our amazing life-saving research without you. So a huge thank you to you for being part of our BHF family and supporting us as well. And until the next time, I wish you and yours the very best, and take care. Thank you for joining us.